Hi there, my name is Mr. Doyle, and this is a great undertaking. In this video, I will be discussing the 1979 made-for-TV two-part miniseries, Salem's Lot. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this one. Well, I won't necessarily get a lot of hate, but I'll definitely get a few thumbs down. In order to get a lot of hate, you would need a lot of views and subscribers, so I'll get a small and inconsequential amount of hate for this one. Also, my fangs fell out. Well, one of them fell out right before recording this video, so I'm leaving them out because it'll be nice to not have a vampiric speech impediment for the rest of this series. There are 5 videos in the Salem's Lot series. The first was for the original 1975 novel by Stephen King, as well as the 2005 illustrated edition, another for the short stories Jerusalem's Lot and One for the Road, which were included in the 1978 collection of short stories entitled Night Shift. This video, in which we will discuss the 1979 made-for-TV miniseries, another video for the 1987 movie, A Return to Salem's Lot, which was intended to be the sequel to the 1979 TV adaptation that this video is about, and finally, a video for the 2004 made-for-TV two-part miniseries. I decided that for this series, I would hide a clip of me having a steak pounded into my chest somewhere in one of the 5 videos. Just gonna have one of my kids drive a stake into my heart. Just normal parent-child bonding stuff that is surely not going to traumatize anyone. So be sure to watch all the Salem's Lot videos to track down that touching, family-friendly moment. It's time for another
Vlad joke.
How can you tell when a vampire is done having sex? When he edraculates. Edraculates. History and background. Directed by Tobe Hooper of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist fame, Salem's Lot was originally intended to be a feature-length film. 3 different people developed separate screenplays, none of which were deemed worthy. One of them just happened to be by Larry Cohen, who had written the screenplay for the original Carrie film and would go on to write, produce, and direct A Return to Salem's Lot, which is this movie's sequel and quite possibly the worst movie ever made. And oh yeah, Larry Cohen did that whole Carrie the musical thing, so you, Larry. King himself was dissatisfied with the scripts of Salem's Lot, and eventually Warner Brothers acquired the project, and they determined that it was better suited as a television miniseries due to the length of the novel. Despite the change to a longer format, many characters were combined, drastically changed, or removed entirely from the screenplay. In particular, the lead villain, Kurt Barlow, was portrayed in a vastly different manner from that of the novel. The adaptation was predominantly well received, and while there was plenty of praise for the pacing, special effects, and actors, I'm afraid I don't necessarily see eye to eye with the critics on this one. Is it by the book? While all of the major characters are present and accounted for, the series, while essentially telling the same tale, goes about it in a slightly different way. From the opening scene, things are familiar, yet there is an added element that is not at all from the book and is rather puzzling. It feels as if there was an intentional decision made to not keep it straight in line with the novel. Almost none of the dialogue from the source material is used, which is unfortunate, and a number of scenes are unnecessarily altered when they would have played much better had the writers stuck to King's text more devoutly.
Okay, so here's that random clip of my 7-year-old daughter Madison slamming a steak into my chest. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Oh God! Oh, that steak really hurt, and now we're gonna eat it. So it's a steak. I never said it was gonna be a wooden steak. I just said a steak. So hello. Okay, that was me getting a steak.
What's more is that even the characters aren't portrayed as they are in the novel, and the relationships to each other don't work as well as a result of this. The changes all seem purposeless and without reason, like they went about changing things for the sake of change rather than to further the story. Even some of the names of the characters are subtly yet pointlessly changed. Also, there are some inconsistencies and issues throughout the series. The whole thing feels rushed and poorly executed. The pacing is super fast, and it's never implied that perhaps things have been happening off camera or away from the viewer's eye that have expedited things. Apparently, the choice to switch from a feature-length film to a two-part miniseries did not solve the problems the switch had been intended to resolve. Another problem is that the order of events sometimes just don't make sense. Scenes from the book have been rearranged and altered in ways that, for me, just don't work. Trying to condense a book that takes approximately 15 hours to read into 3 hours leaves much to be desired and is bound to create pacing issues if the writers don't make the cuts in the right places. This adaptation spends a lot of time dragging out scenes unnecessarily when that time would have been better spent exploring details and characters and doing a better job of telling the story. In the original film version of Carrie, they trimmed the fat in a way that didn't feel detrimental to the flow or overall story arc. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for Salem's Lot. Another major difference is that Barlow has no lines in this film, and there was a decision made to portray him not as a gentleman, but as a non-verbal, bloodthirsty animal. I'm not saying it doesn't work at all, but the Barlow of the novel is certainly more effective and impactful. Vibe and tone. The score takes a great deal of credit for the near constant menacing and aggressively dark tone of the series. However, some of the sets are incredible, and the tone throughout the film is reliably of impending doom and dread. Soundtrack. Composer Harry Suckman, distinguished musician and guy with a great porn name, was recruited to provide an atmospheric, old-fashioned score. The super dramatic live instrumentation is intense and extremely effective. He provides a classic horror movie score that is on par with Hitchcock films and no doubt inspired the likes of Danny Elfman and Hans Zimmer. Cast and acting. Some of the casting was not great. And not because the acting was bad. I mean, some of the acting is pretty bad. But rather, the actors often seem just too old for the roles. When Ben Mears has dinner with Susan's parents, he looks as old as her father. Mike Ryerson, the cemetery groundskeeper, is described in the novel as a handsome 20-something. And in this movie, he's clearly a 40-year-old man trying to act like a 20-year-old. Straker is not nearly the ominous, sinister character of the novel. He's portrayed as a refined gentleman who does little to arouse the suspicions of the townspeople, and is not foreboding or intimidated. I think I need to put the fangs back in. He's not foreboding or intimidating in the least. Special effects, sound, editing, and cinematography. The makeup and creature effects aren't great, but for their era, they are decent. Apparently, the glow-in-the-dark contacts used for the vampires were invented specifically for this film. They weren't without flaws, though, as they could only be worn for 15 minutes at a time and had a tendency to turn sideways. Barlow is pretty scary and gives off some straight-up Nosferatu vibes, but there's a level of cheese that comes with it. The interior of the Marston house, though, is awesome. It is disheveled and dark. It's just a nightmarish setting. The set designers absolutely crushed it. It's dank and filthy. All I could think about was all the black mold and asbestos. If hunting vamps at Marston House doesn't kill you, the resulting respiratory infection certainly will. And I'm sorry if maybe right now is not the best time for respiratory illness jokes. Because this was a made-for-TV series from the 70s, there is no gore whatsoever. It's a freaking horror story about vampires, man. I'm sorry, but this format just cannot do justice to this story when it comes to the gory details. It's a shame, really. Here's hoping the 2004 remake is able to take up the slack and provide me with the bloody carnage that I thirst for. Finally, this movie, it loves fog. Creepy scene in the woods, fog. Vampire at the window, better have some fog. Dispatching a vampire, throw some fog on that. Are you making an overrated horror TV miniseries, but the vibe just isn't quite right? Are the vampires not believable enough, so you need to zazz things up a bit? Well, why not zazz things up a whole bunch and just say fog it? That's right, fog it makes everything creepier no matter how mundane. Woods too boring? Fog it. Vampire child not spooky enough? Fog it. There's nothing a little fog it attitude can't handle. That's right, just say fog it and make all of your film's shortcomings disappear. Call 1-800-FOG-IT now and get way more fog than any movie ever needs. Final thoughts. There are two prerequisites needed to enjoy this miniseries, in my opinion. Number one, you can't have read the book first, or at least not recently. And two, you have to have seen it back in the day and retain the ability to view it through your nostalgia goggles to still consider it a classic. I did not have the luxury of either of these prerequisites, and so this adaptation just did not work for me. It wasn't laughably bad, but as is so often the case with King adaptations, they tried to fit too much information in too short an amount of time, and as a result, the impact was lost. Also, you can't take an awesomely bloody book and sanitize it for TV without sacrificing the horror elements of the book, especially not back in the day when standards and practices were far more strict in regards to what you could show on TV. Here's hoping the 2004 version benefited from the loosening of regulations and censorship on TV. Alright, we've still got a few more videos to go in this series, so check them all out, and please give me some of those sweet, sweet views! Okay. Goodbye. Be sure to click like and subscribe to the channel for my continued analysis of all things Stephen King, pretty please with blood and guts on top. My name is Mr. Doyle, and this has been a great undertaking.